COVID-19 was not the first public health emergency to shake the province of British Columbia. On April 14, 2016, the province declared the opioid crisis as a public health emergency. Between January and July of this year alone, 911 overdose fatalities were recorded in the province. Vancouver's Downtown Eastside has been particularly impacted by these overlapping health crises, with housing insecurity making these impacts much more publicly visible.
So today, under the order that Minister Farnworth has issued, I'm announcing that we are preparing to dismantle encampments in Oppenheimer Park in Vancouver and to bring the residents of these camps inside.
Oppenheimer Park is a public park situated on the unceded, traditional, and ancestral territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh in what is now known as Vancouver, British Columbia. At the time of eviction, roughly 300 people resided in the tent community at Oppenheimer Park. The eviction of these residents by the BC government, Vancouver Park Board, and the Vancouver Police Department was framed as a health and safety decision, though arguably limited to the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. The dense community, which had little to no facilities with running water, soap, or sanitation, were a primary concern for government officials who did not believe residents could safely follow provincial health regulations in the current condition. In addition, many immunocompromised residents with chronic diseases and disabilities are at a higher risk of contracting the COVID-19 virus. Shelters and drop-ins were already overwhelmed and underfunded prior to the pandemic, leaving little room to offer additional showers, laundry, or washing facilities to support the unhoused populations during these times. There is a lack of information on cases within the neighborhood. Residents are concerned that they aren't properly informed of the risks, especially given their vulnerability and difficulty in contact tracing. So while many governments across the world have urged residents to stay home and self-isolate, we are left with the question, where do you quarantine when you don't have a home? The government's response to overlapping public health crises was to remove residents from Oppenheimer Park and place them into single-room occupancies in vacant hotels across Vancouver's downtown. Despite the optimism of a promise for housing, the plan was unsustainable. What was absent from the government's health and safety decision was the consideration for mental health. When developing the so-called decampment plan, who is considering the emotional effects of displacement and dispersal of a community, or the emotional effects of isolation? How would isolating residents in unmonitored SROs be safe for drug users who were already at a greater risk of overdose? The order assured housing to residents, however, only 140 units of mostly SRO housing have been offered, which is not nearly enough to house the 300 people living in 225 tents at the time of eviction. Since many residents did not get housing, they had nowhere to go.
For their long-term sustainability, the residents of Oppenheimer Park need to be meaningfully consulted and included in the development of any plans related to their living situations. Advocates demand from the City of Vancouver, provincial and federal governments, and the Parks Board to build modular housing, to not fence off Oppenheimer Park, to clearly indicate the name and location of places that people can go if they are evicted and have no housing provided to them. Importantly, they need to acknowledge that these evictions are taking place on stolen, unceded Indigenous territories. The president of the Union BC Indian Chiefs, Grand Chief Stuart Phillip, says that a disproportionately high number of the vulnerable park residents facing the loss of a safe and stable living condition are Indigenous. Any move to forcefully evict them is callous and insensitive to the mental health, addictions, and poverty that they are battling as a result of an ongoing colonial legacy of systemic discrimination and oppression. In addition, the Union BC Indian Chiefs and Union Gospel Mission are calling for transparency from the Vancouver Coastal Health. They are calling for a commitment to publicly report any cases in the Downtown Eastside so that residents of the densely populated neighborhood can take extra precaution for their health and safety. Where is the city going from here? As of October 6th, Vancouver Mayor Kennedy Stewart is recommending a $30 million emergency fund to help homeless individuals find a roof before winter. The city plans to lease or purchase housing units in vacant apartments, hotels, and single-room rentals. They also plan to connect residents to social services. However, advocates are concerned that the government will abandon their affordable housing plans and return to the status quo. We often wonder, when will life go back to normal? But for Oppenheimer Park residents, normal was invisible, forgotten, and neglected.